No, well, I was not aware until yesterday when our buddy Tinwin made me aware that a game that I had been mistaking for an indie game all year long after playing it, Dave the Diver. Um, the developer mintrocket behind Dave the Diver is apparently not an indie studio and is now, as we know, you can see here, a sub-brand of Nexon. And the thing that really is kind of weird to me is, like, if that's the case, why is Dave the Diver and don't get me wrong, dude, this game was amazing. It was so good. But why is if this is a sub brand, a sub company out of Nexon, why is it still not being published by Nexon? You know, other than the fact that they're probably trying to dupe people out of thinking that this company has any kind of affiliation with Nexon. I don't know why else they would do this. And maybe I just don't understand the like ins and outs of what's going on business wise here, but I had been under the impression the entire year that this was an indie company, and they are actually being put up for indie awards and everything, and they legit are not an indie company. And that feels bad, dude. Where, I mean, looking it up this morning, and again, shout out to Tinwin for making us aware yesterday. mintrocket has stated they are not an indie developer and is a sub-brand of Nexon, dude. This was 9 hours ago. So I want to pull this up and talk about this because they were nominated for best indie game. They actually had the second most votes for best indie game at the Golden Joystick Awards, and they're nominated for best indie game for the Game Awards coming up in about 3 weeks. But as you can see, Dave the Diver was developed by mintrocket, a subsidiary of Nexon. I had no idea. And Nexon's a huge flipping company. Don't shoot the messenger or harpoon, as I am simply remarking on what has turned out to be quite a curious case of identity in the realm of gaming. Indie darling Dave the Diver had a meteoric rise to the top of the Steam charts earlier this year. A sleeper hit that introduced us all to the charming world of running a sushi bar, hunting down your very own ingredients. The game is still a banger, no denying, but it's not an indie game. That's for sure. It's still an amazing game, and at a $20 price point, everybody should be playing this game. I wholly believe that. I'll stand by that. I got 55 hours of gameplay out of this and wasn't finished, like, with everything you can do in the game. I beat it. I beat the game. There was still a lot left that you could get done, and I played a very completionist style playthrough, but there was still more to do. And at 55 hours for $20, that's a really good deal, dude. And every day was something new and fresh. It felt great. It was an awesome game. But it does change the way I feel a little bit about it not being an indie game. A sleeper hit that introduced all to the charming world of running a sushi bar and hunting down your very own ingredients. A delightful little game. Let me turn off this music real quick. I apologize. Let me do this. There we go. Yeah. Cool. Delightful little game that had everyone aflutter with how great indie games are at introducing us all to new concepts and ideas in this dreary AAA saturated world. Only what if I was to tell you that we have all been bamboozled because Dave the Diver isn't actually an indie game? Now, I am hardly the first person to report these findings, but I find myself plunging into the cool waters today because of how things are heating up. As it is award season, nominations for titles are being rapid-fired out to recognize the plethora of awesome interactive goodies we have had this year. One such lofty crown is the one that dictates the best independent game for 2023. And surprising no one, Dave the Diver is appearing on some of those lists. Only I lied, because some people are surprised. And these are the people who know a little more about Dave's diving experience. People who looked a little closer at who developed the game and under what umbrella. Now, let me be frank. I think Dave the Diver is a brilliant game, and I personally think it represents many of the more positive elements of game development. I agree with that totally, which is why it was like my indie game of the year this year until now that I know it's not a flippin' indie game. I still think everybody should try this game out. It's very refreshing. It's a lot of fun. It's great as far as, again, every day I played this game was something new. It was like something fresh every single day, a new gameplay element brought to the table for me, brought to the sushi table, if you will. You know what I'm saying? And it was very funny too. It was just a great time all the way around. The only issue is that it technically did not come from an independent company. The developer is mintrocket, a quote standalone brand of Nexon, a somewhat massive publicly traded gaming company. At a glance, this puts Dave in a precarious state when arguing that his diving fund could be wholly considered independent. So much so that even Kim Dae-won, vice president of Nexon Korea, has stated that Dave the Diver may look like an indie, but it is not necessarily so. In a piece pinned by Korea Jung-ang Daily, Kim Dae-won even confirmed that their strategy with mintrocket was to offshoot a smaller team to guarantee maximum creativity, with their strategy to afford more time to the team for development as a way to compensate for the smaller team numbers. That's great, but why would they have mintrocket publish it instead of Nexon publish it? Other than to pull the wool over people's eyes potentially. So basically, Nexon managed. So these are a lot of the so do not vote for Dave the Diver. Dave the Diver is not an independent game. Despite the game's indie look, mintrocket has stated they are not an indie developer. mintrocket is a sub-brand from Nexon. Right. So basically, Nexon managed to emulate the main facets of indie game success. Small teams, creative ideas, affording time to make things great without actually having mintrocket commit to being a truly independent team. Neat. Agreed. Great. But why make mintrocket also the publisher instead of their parent company? Instead of trying to make it seem, I don't know. I mean, and look, I'm not a business aficionado in the gaming industry. There could be substantial reasons for why you would want to do this, but it seems weird that being a subsidiary, Nexon wouldn't publish this game, other than to try and dupe people into thinking that it is an indie game, an indie studio. Of course, this has then resulted in a very fun little conversation across the web as many rush to ruminate on what an independent game truly is. We've had this conversation. I mean, I think everybody's going to have their own idea of what should and should not be considered an indie game. My definition of an indie game is a team of probably, 20 would be pushing it. 20 would be pushing, but I would say less than 20 people on a team and a studio that is truly independent. Not under any other developer. Not owned by any other company. Is truly independent of any kind of oversight or management of any company that could hold sway over them. Truly independent and a small studio. This is what, in my opinion, an indie game should be. Because we've talked about this before too, and with our buddy Tinwin, we fleshed this out in the true aspect of what an independent studio is. It's a studio that's not owned, not a subsidiary of another studio. Most people's definition is closer to what mine is, but truly an independent studio is a studio that's just not owned. So really, a studio like Larian, even though they're large and publicly traded, and there are companies that own a percentage of them, their stock and everything, right? They're not owned. by a bigger company. They are independent. Larian is independent. So therefore, Baldur's Gate 3 could be considered an independent game, couldn't it? Because Larian is truly an independent studio. It depends on everybody's definition. And I've said this before. I said it this morning as well. When you're going to talk about what games can be nominated for certain different awards, whether you're talking about the Golden Joysticks or you're talking about the Game Awards each year, some of it's going to come down to the criteria with which that specific showcase or event sets for what they think an indie game should be, right? Again, I've got my own definition. Other people have their own definition, but I don't think it should be any studio that is owned by another company. I also don't think it should be a studio as big as Larian, because that's not really fair to the other studios out there that are small, independent, starting out companies that are trying to get their stuff done. But it depends on people's definition. It's kind of a murky water kind of situation, depending on each person's interpretation of what indie should be. But this is definitely, mintrocket's not an indie company. Absolutely not. They're owned. They have a lot of backing. Yeah. I think this is a great way for Nexon to try and branch out and give some good developers flexibility and time to make great products, because we see how that's worked out. Dave the Diver's a banger. I think this is a great strategy for making great video games, but they're not an independent studio. The textbook definition is thrown around a lot, sure, but Dave the Diver is now rocking the heck out of that boat, which is a fun diving adjacent pun. Correct. My favorite outcome is absolutely this incredible weaponized community note on the platform Twitter that picks some choice words to effectively spell out nuh-uh to any onlookers. Nominees for Best Independent Game for the Game Awards are Cocoon, Dave the Diver, Dredge, Sea of Stars, Viewfinder. Sea of Stars should win it. Dredge, notable mention. Dredge was a lot of fun. That was by Salt. Salt something or something Salt. They're an Australian-based developer. Dredge was very good. It's kind of been like one of my honorable mention games all year long. It was a lot of fun to play. I loved Dredge. It was very cool. It's nowhere near, I think, something you're going to get out of like Sea of Stars, which I haven't played, but I've heard a lot about, or something like Dave the Diver. But Dave the Diver is not an independent game. It is a fantastic diversion of interest to the usual rumblings of award season, such as who was snubbed, why a game actually sucks, etc., with a simple argument of how the heck did this game end up in that category. As for what will happen, if anything, it is worth keeping an eye on. As for the rest of the award season, Dave the Diver already managed to grab a nomination and dodge the actual trophy over at the Golden Joysticks. So perhaps we all sit back and await the fallout when Dave harpoons himself an actual indie game of the year win. Maybe the acceptance speech will be something worth remembering. Yeah, I think this is what I was kind of talking about yesterday. If this was the case, I think that, and you know why they won't do it, but I think that mintrocket, the best thing they could do is reach out to the Game Awards and go, we should not be nominated for this award. They won't do that, but I think that's the best case scenario. If they've already been publicly stating from themselves they're not an indie company, they don't consider themselves to be an indie company because they're not. They're a subsidiary of a very large corporation. They should be reaching out to the Game Awards and saying, please remove us. We do not deserve to be in the running for this award. And if they're not taken off as a nominee for Best Indie Game of the Year and they win it, they don't accept it. They hand the award over to the next highest voted game. They don't accept that award. That's the way it should go. That's not the way it probably will go, but that's the way it should go. Very interesting. Shout out to our buddy Tinwin. I had no idea Dave the Diver and mintrocket was a subsidiary of Nexon until yesterday. Appreciate it, buddy. That's rough, dude.